As I begin my discussion on the book of Revelation with MtZion211, I want to present some things before I do, so in order to help those who look at my videos to understand where I'm coming from on the book of Revelation. First of all, I've got to believe that the book of Revelation is God's word to mankind, and as such it is relevant to us, it has authority for us, and it stands as a testimony to the nature of God. I also am going to be remembering that the book of Revelation comes from an historical context of persecution and oppression of God's people. Now, there were other people being persecuted and oppressed then, but more specifically God's people were. And in this, John is looking for God to balance the scales of justice within human history in the background of this persecution. It seems clear that John saw such persecution and injustice to the point that only God, acting in human history, could bring an end to history, destroy evil, and usher in his everlasting kingdom. Some of the mysteries of the book of Revelation can be cleared up when we search the Old Testament, and I'll be talking more about that in a minute. First, I want to talk to you about something that you may not have ever heard of, or if you have, you'll be ahead of others on it. It is what is called a theological vector. When we interpret the text, we cannot interpret the text with a meaning that it never could have meant to the original audience. In other words, I can't come away from the book of Revelation with some meaning that they never understood it to be. And if we do not interpret the text in an historical and cultural sense, the original meaning will be marred. And I see that happening a lot with people's interpretation today, who do not try to interpret the book of Revelation in the historical setting, and they walk away with a marred view of the book of Revelation. What all this means is this, that when we give verse meaning, it must run parallel along an historical and theological track that is connected with and encompasses the original meaning. If it steps outside of that boundary, then I feel that we're going to mar the interpretation of the book of Revelation. I mentioned something about the Old Testament earlier. I feel we must look at relationships to the Old Testament prophecy as well. In other words, look back at the Old Testament prophecy, whether it be Isaiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, or whomever, and look at the relationships as well if we're going to interpret the book of Revelation. And by this, the Old Testament prophecies many times insinuate the point that the book of Revelations is related to in a similar time in history, a similar set of circumstances, and to particular people. For instance, like in the book of Daniel, relating to the Jewish persecution under the Maccabees, and that sort of thing. And what this simply means is that when we address an issue, we cannot do so until we first understand something about what it meant to the early church. And the early church had a lot of things to say about this, and I'm not going to step outside of the Bible unless they present the Bible themselves, but I will probably be saying some things the early church had to say about this. But we've got to understand a lot of times too, what was the context of this early church, especially in the time of John. How did they understand the book of Revelation? Let me now, in talking about that, let me say a word about imagery and symbols now. To me, they have forms of like castles in the sky rather than reality. And its language is cryptic, highly symbolic, and very highly symbolic. These symbols are not drawn from our modern day world. In other words, these are images and symbols that existed many years back that are not in our modern world as we know it today. They are drawn from the language, experience, and culture of the ancient world. The assumptions that underlie these symbols are likewise not those of modern scientific world view of our Western world, but they come from the Near East some 2,000 years ago. These strange multi-headed beasts, the creatures, the dragons, and odd combinations of characters and imagery in there were a common way of writing back then. Their purpose, and this is very important, I believe, their purpose was to present a world that did not exist except as a meaning of communication. In other words, many times John may be writing about something that may not be real at all, but he is using it as a form of communication because a Jewish audience would have understood it, especially coming from Jewish apocalyptic literature. They would have understood what John was saying. So it may not have had an original meaning at all, other than a forms of communication. It is that culture and their language, and with their understanding of symbols, which I feel we must use to understand the book of Revelation first before we can make application for us today. In other words, when I can understand what it was meaning to the original hearer, then some way I can draw that into today's world and make some application of it. Let me say a word about the author of the book of Revelation. My belief is that the Apostle John is the author. There are those who disagree with that, and I hope you will take the time to do some self-study to determine who the author is yourself. But my view, and I'm not going to get into detail about it, it is the Apostle John. There's internal and external evidence about the author of the author of Revelation being John, the same writer of the Gospel of John and the three epistles of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. The date of Revelation also comes into question. There are those who hold to an early date of between 66 AD and 68 AD. Others hold a later date, anywhere ranging from 90 AD to 96 AD. Again, I hope that you will take the time to study that for yourself to arrive at what date you thought or you think the book of Revelation is written. For my own reasons, I hold to an earlier date of the writing of the book of Revelation, from 66 AD to 68 AD. And while I'm on this subject here, let me say this. Many of you are futurists today, and I don't know of any that don't hold to a date of a later date of the book of Revelations of 90 AD to 96 AD. If there's some futurists out there who don't hold to that date, I wish you'd let me know. But as far as I know, no futurist holds to an early date. They hold to a latter date. Now then, if that is what you really believe, then that is okay. But many of these people who are futurists don't hold to this date because they've investigated to see if it's right, but because it fits in to their doomsday presentation of the book of Revelation. And to many of them, that is the only reason they hold to a later date, because they can adjust dates or do whatever they want to with dates and fit it into their prophecy. Rather than allowing prophecy to fit naturally, they have to force fit it a lot of times. So again, if you hold to 90 AD to 96 AD because that's what you studied and what you believe, then that's well and good. But if the only reason you hold to that date is because it fits your other theological thinking, then I think you've done yourself an injustice. Again, I will leave this date as to when the book of Revelation is up to you, and hopefully you will study it and come away with your own understanding. But again, I hold to the early date of the writing of Revelation, anywhere from 66 AD to 68 AD. With all that said, now I'm going to begin working on several videos that dealing with the context of the book of Revelation itself and what the verses actually mean to me. Again, giving you evidence as to why I feel that way. MtZion211 will be doing the same thing in his videos. Now, this is not one of those cases where I'm going to make one, he's going to make one, I'm going to make one, he's going to make one. We're just going to make our videos, and of course we're letting each other know they're ready. We're just going to make our videos and put them out there for people to see. And this is something that is not limited to a number of videos, like 3, 4, 5. If it takes MtZion however many he wants to use, that is strictly up to him. I want him to make as many videos as he can so he can present his case in a well and informed way. And I know that he wants me to do the same thing. So this is not a matter of a number of videos that he's going to make and I'm going to make. My main purpose is that I'm going to hit the main topics of the book of Revelation. I'm not going to be covering it verse by verse, but I will be hitting the main topics in there, and hopefully people will go back in and fill in the blanks. So I hope you look forward to this and look for your questions and your answers and your support. Until next time, this has been Golly saying, God bless.